Just moments ago, Nigel Farage ignited a political firestorm by exposing what could be one of the most outrageous council spending scandals in modern British history. With documents in hand and auditors already dispatched, Farage has pulled back the curtain on a system riddled with reckless spending, backdoor deals, and jaw-dropping waste of taxpayers' money. This isn't just another case of poor budgeting. This is a full-blown exposé of how local councils across the country have quietly drained public funds, while services crumble and tax rates soar. And now, with Reform UK holding a growing number of council seats, the truth is finally being dragged into the light. Nigel Farage's decision to launch a sweeping audit into council finances wasn't born out of speculation. It was triggered by a storm of public complaints, mounting debt figures, and the unsettling silence from officials when asked where the money has gone. With Reform UK now in control of 10 councils, Farage saw the perfect opening to act. A dedicated team of forensic auditors was deployed almost immediately, given full authority to dig into financial records dating back a decade. The mission? Follow the money, uncover the truth, and expose every single pound that's been wasted without justification. And it didn't take long for the scandalous findings to emerge. In the early stages of the audit, one of the most damning discoveries came from Derbyshire, where council officials had poured an eye-watering £150 million into a recycling plant that remains non-functional to this day. The project, riddled with delays and unexplained cost overruns, was sold to the public as a cutting-edge solution to local waste management. Yet, years later, the facility sits idle, while surrounding communities struggle with irregular bin collections and growing waste piles. Residents, who were promised progress, are now demanding answers. How could this level of mismanagement go unnoticed? And more importantly, who signed off on it? The auditors then turned their attention to Kent, where documents revealed that council funds had been used to maintain representative offices not only in Brussels but also within other UK counties, offices that provide no clear benefit to local taxpayers. On top of that, $12,000 was spent sending 5 council staffers to a luxury property conference in the south of France, all under the justification of investment outreach. The backlash was immediate. Families struggling to pay bills and facing cuts to essential services could hardly believe their money had been used for what many now call political holidays. But the scandal doesn't stop there. In Nottinghamshire, a staggering $150,000 was spent developing the My Nots app, an ambitious digital service platform meant to modernise public communication. Yet the app has gained virtually no traction, with fewer than a dozen meaningful reviews and almost no daily users. Critics now say the app stands as a symbol of digital vanity projects, expensive, unnecessary, and poorly executed. Meanwhile, potholes go unfilled and care services remain underfunded. The spending spiral continues in Doncaster, where the council pushed forward with a $20 million cycle lane initiative. While green travel is important, residents are baffled at the sheer scale of the investment, especially when local data shows that cycling activity in the area has barely increased. Instead of community infrastructure or support for small businesses, the money was funneled into empty lanes that remain mostly unused. And then came Lincolnshire, where auditors uncovered an annual expense of $11,500 on 8 diversity training courses. At a time when children's centres are facing closure and emergency services are stretched thin, many argue such training, while possibly well-intentioned, should never take precedence over public safety or education. People are asking the hard questions. Who sets these priorities? Why are they so out of touch with the needs of everyday families? It's becoming increasingly clear that local councils have been operating in a bubble, one shielded from scrutiny, accountability and common sense. And with Nigel Farage now shining a spotlight on the worst offenders, the floodgates are opening. More whistleblowers are coming forward, more financial records are being unearthed, and the public is finally seeing how their hard-earned money has been used not to serve, but to splurge. Richard Tice has thrown his full support behind the audit, calling out what he describes as a culture of arrogance among council executives, who behave as though taxpayer money is their personal checkbook. He points to spiralling council debts, absurd consultancy fees, and luxurious office refurbishments as symptoms of a deeper disease, one that Reform UK is now determined to cure. He warns that unless this culture of reckless spending is confronted, head-on, communities will continue to suffer, and public trust in local governance will evaporate completely. This isn't just about isolated mistakes or minor budgeting errors. This is systemic. It's widespread. And according to Reform UK insiders, what's been exposed so far is just the tip of the iceberg. Farage himself has pledged to take this investigation further than anyone has dared before. Independent investigators are already preparing to review confidential contracts with special attention to deals awarded without competitive bidding, deals that, in some cases, link back to political donors and personal allies. If the allegations prove true, the fallout could be devastating for several sitting councillors and possibly lead to criminal inquiries. Stay tuned for Section 2, where we dive deeper into the most outrageous consultancy contracts, the shadowy world of council procurement, and how millions have vanished behind closed doors while frontline services collapse. What's revealed next will make your blood boil. As Nigel Farage's audit presses forward, the spotlight has now turned to one of the most troubling elements of council spending: the quiet, relentless flow of public money into private consultancy contracts. While potholes deepen, libraries close, and elderly care services face brutal cuts, council budgets have been bleeding millions into outside firms offering strategic advice, training programs, and so-called innovation plans. What the audit has uncovered is not just a few bad decisions, but a systematic culture of overspending, often with minimal oversight and shocking disregard for value. Take West Northamptonshire Council, for example. A staggering $44,000 was spent to hire just one waste strategy consultant. The role wasn't long-term, nor did it lead to any significant overhaul in waste collection. Yet this one consultant walked away with more money than most council workers make in a year. Residents who still experience sporadic rubbish pickups. In North Northamptonshire, the story gets even more bizarre. Here, the council approved a $1.1 million scheme to distribute free vapes to adult smokers. Officially, it was billed as a health initiative to help residents quit smoking, but the way the contract was awarded raised eyebrows. No public tender was held. The details of the delivery partners remain vague, and despite the hefty investment, there's little data to show how many people actually benefited. Many residents see it as yet another example of top-down spending divorced from reality, funneling money into trends instead of focusing on critical services like clinics, housing, or emergency care. Farage's auditors have also flagged what they call consultant creep, where councils bring in firms not just for advice, but for services that could easily be performed in-house, often at half the cost. In one Midlands borough, over $300,000 was spent in a single year on rebranding and public image strategy. The outcome? A new logo, a few colour changes on the website, and a series of slogans plastered across town centres, none of which improved public satisfaction or engagement. It's vanity spending at its most blatant. In Greater Manchester, an internal council memo revealed that $80,000 had been earmarked for a diversity and inclusion framework drawn up by a London-based consultancy. Yet many council staff say they were never even briefed on the framework, and its impact remains invisible. Critics argue that these kinds of deals are being pushed through under buzzwords and token gestures, while the actual needs of diverse communities, affordable housing, job programmes, access to care, are left unmet. Even more shocking are the hidden costs. A review of procurement logs in one southern council revealed that consultants were regularly flown in from other regions, with travel and accommodation billed directly to the council. In one case, a 3-day workshop led by an external firm cost over $25,000, more than the council's annual budget for youth outreach. Farage has been quick to highlight that these consultancy contracts often come with little transparency. Contracts are awarded without scrutiny, benchmarks are vague or non-existent, and follow-up audits are rare. Many firms are brought in based on personal networks or prior relationships with councillors or executive staff. It's a system that thrives in the shadows, shielded by complexity and unchallenged authority. Reform UK has now made a formal request to the Local Government Association to issue a nationwide review of all third-party consultant agreements over the last 5 years. If approved, it could expose a trail of financial irresponsibility running deep through council operations. Farage is demanding immediate changes, greater transparency in procurement, stricter controls on external hires, and full public access to contract details. The stakes are growing. As these revelations come to light, the public's patience is wearing thin. Communities are no longer willing to tolerate being told there's no money for essentials, while their taxes fund luxury consultants and hollow PR campaigns. What was, once hidden behind closed doors, is now becoming impossible to ignore. In the next section, we'll explore the spiralling executive salaries, the secret golden handshakes, and how some council leaders have quietly pocketed fortunes while residents face service cuts and rising taxes. The scandal deepens, and the names behind the figures are about to be revealed. As Nigel Farage's investigation moves deeper into the tangled web of council spending, one area is emerging as particularly further south in Kent. Farage's audit uncovered a disturbing paper trail showing how over $20 million was allocated to develop a smart city infrastructure aimed at connecting transport systems, public services, and surveillance under a digital network. But years later, the only visible results are a handful of digital signposts and a barely functioning traffic app. Contractors have come and gone, each blaming the other for delays, and the council now faces pressure to explain where the rest of the money went. In Nottinghamshire, the infamous My Nots mobile app was meant to bring local services to the fingertips of residents. However, after spending $150,000 on its development, usage data revealed the app had virtually no public engagement. The platform, meant to modernise access to council information, instead became a digital ghost town with a user base so small that most residents didn't even know it existed. What's more, reviews in app stores consistently describe the app as buggy, confusing, and unusable, a far cry from the seamless experience promised. Meanwhile, in the town of Doncaster, a staggering $20 million was funneled into constructing a new network of cycle lanes intended to promote greener commuting. But cycling rates have barely increased, and many of the lanes sit empty, poorly maintained, and rarely used. Critics have argued that the council failed to conduct proper feasibility studies or consider alternative solutions. Despite the clear failure, no accountability has followed, and public trust in local decision-making continues to plummet. Another shocking case emerged from West Northamptonshire, where council leaders approved the construction of a state-of-the-art community hub intended to serve as a public gathering point, complete with a library, health centre, and youth facilities. The project received a $9 million budget, but midway through, construction was halted due to unforeseen budgetary constraints. Years later, the site remains fenced off, partially built, and deteriorating in the elements, while local families continue to lack access to basic services. Farage has used these failed ventures to underline a deeper issue, the culture of announce and abandon. Councils announce ambitious projects with grand promises and flashy headlines, securing initial funding and media attention. But once public interest wanes, oversight collapses, and these projects become breeding grounds for inefficiency, cronyism, and financial leakage. There's no long-term planning, no risk assessments, and no consequences for failure. The people suffer the consequences, while those responsible simply move on to the next big announcement. Reform UK is now demanding an emergency review of all ongoing and upcoming council projects nationwide. Farage insists that any project receiving public funds must include binding contracts with enforceable milestones, clawback clauses for failed delivery, and third-party oversight. Without this, he warns, councils will continue wasting millions while evading responsibility. As public outrage builds, the evidence grows clearer by the day. Local councils have not just mismanaged funds, they've betrayed the public's trust. But this audit is far from over. In the next section, we'll explore the most controversial area of all: how councils have used taxpayers' money to fund political lobbying, foreign travel, and even ideological campaigns. Spending that has nothing to do with public service, and everything to do with self-interest and image management. The revelations uncovered by Nigel Farage's audit send a clear message. Local councils across England are riddled with financial mismanagement, wasteful spending, and a disturbing lack of accountability. Taxpayers are bearing the cost of reckless decisions, inflated salaries, and failed projects while vital public services continue to deteriorate. This isn't just a political scandal, it's a crisis affecting every community, every family, and every individual who depends on local government to deliver essential services. Now is the time for action. The public can no longer afford to accept vague promises and half-hearted apologies. Councils must be held to the highest standards of transparency and fiscal responsibility. Independent oversight must become the norm, not the exception. Contracts must include strict performance metrics and penalties for failure. Executive pay must be capped and linked directly to measurable outcomes that benefit taxpayers, not just bureaucrats. Every penny spent should be justifiable and open to public scrutiny. Reform UK, led by Nigel Farage and Richard Tice, is pushing hard for reforms that will overhaul how local authorities manage their budgets. Their proposals aim to restore trust, cut waste, and prioritise frontline services that truly matter to residents, from road repairs and social care to education and waste management. But real change requires public support. It's time for voters to demand transparency from their elected officials, to question questionable expenditures, and to hold councils accountable at every election. If you are as outraged as many others by what this audit has revealed, make your voice heard. Contact your local council representatives, attend town hall meetings, and insist on clear answers about where your money is going. Support campaigns and politicians who champion financial responsibility and refuse to tolerate mismanagement. Share this information widely, raise awareness in your community, and encourage others to demand better. The era of unchecked spending and hidden waste must end. Every citizen deserves a local government that works for them, not against them. Nigel Farage's investigation is only the beginning of a much-needed reckoning. Together, we can ensure that council tax money is spent wisely, services are protected, and future generations are not burdened by the mistakes of today. The choice is clear. Tolerate the status quo and watch services collapse under financial strain, or rise up and demand the accountability and reform that local councils desperately need. The power to make this change starts with you. Don't let this moment pass. Stand up, speak out, and be part of the movement to restore integrity to local government.